Hello, everybody. This is Amy Barsanti. It's March the 4th, 2021, believe it or not. I'd like to start the meeting for the Planning, Zoning, and Housing Committee of the RTM. It is 7:32.
Amy, can you just give me one? Amy, can you just give me 1 second? I just want to caller. The caller on the phone. Could you identify yourself?
Yeah, Susan Lauritsen.
I have a caller on the phone. Could you identify yourself?
Susan Lauritsen.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Thanks.
Hi.
I just wanted to know who it was.
And has Jen Moeller or Carolyn Bain joined us yet?
No.
Carolyn Bain is on the tile. I see her on the there. Okay. All right. Amy Chickles is going to serve as secretary as normal. Amy, are you on board with attendance with everybody in the display? Okay. Terrific.
Yes, but who's Patricia Finn?
Oh, that's Patty Baumgartner.
Patty Baumgartner. We might have some outsiders viewing meeting at the time. Okay, we're going to get the meeting to order. We were going to first order of business is approve the minutes of January 14th, 2021. I will remind people who were not there, Mike Casolo, Marcy Minnick, and Carolyn Bain. If everybody's had a chance, they were attached to the meeting agenda. Does anybody have any issues or ready to approve the minutes in that meeting?
Amy?
Yeah.
Hi, it's Carolyn. I just had one question. Under Corbin District, it said river has been rerouted. Was that a typo, or I'm not quite sure what that was referring to?
That's referring to the underground waterway that was under that area that needed to be diverted before construction began.
Got it. Okay, thank you.
Jeremy? Is that
yes,
correct?
I'd say river might be a little ambitious. Certainly, it was a drainage way, brook, whatever words we want to use. And since that time, it has been undergrounded. And in the near future, you'll be able to walk from Corbin Drive into the Center Street parking lot because there won't be a water course of some sort there. That's
okay,
correct.
Great. Thank you.
Perfect. Any other clarifications? No. Okay. Any objections to approving the minutes as presented? Okay. All right. Moving on. Next order of business is we have two guests here. Terry Wood has graciously agreed to join us out of her busy day, as has Jeremy Ginsburg, also very busy people, and have joined our meeting to give us an overview of the proposed legislation that is in Hartford at present that will have potential impact on planning and zoning for local municipalities. And I know this is not the first time we've discussed this, but I wanted to invite Terry to give us a little bit of an insider's view into Hartford, how these bills get presented, how they progress, and how as committee members we can do our best to follow the bouncing ball through it all. And we also have Jeremy here to help boil it down to what's proposed and what does that mean for our planning and zoning officials and residents of Darien potentially when the rubber meets the road on these things. So to that, I'm going to turn it over to Terry she's provided a summary and created a summary for us to frame the issues for us.
Great. Thank you so much, Amy, and thank you to you all for being here tonight. It's always a pleasure for me to have conversations with constituents on important issues because I need to hear your voice on things. That's my most important role, is to be your voice. So this purpose of this is to inform and educate and hopefully inspire engagement on this because it is an important issue. Connecticut has had local control in the municipalities for decades and decades, if not centuries. So there are some important changes. We all need to understand what they are. So the process is, some of these bills have already had public hearings, a couple of them, and I think, Amy, this letter went out to everybody from Steve Mulvaney.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Thank you for, I don't know if everybody's received that in their inbox today with the reminder for the meeting. The Planning and Zoning Commission did issue a letter to be admitted into the public record.
Right, and that was for the public hearing on housing. So there are two committees of oversight for the state control of local zoning issues. One is the Housing Committee, and the other is the Planning and Development Committee. Housing Committee has heard 5 or 6 bills to this point, and I see one of them was today. And boy, things move so fast in Hartford. Even those of us who work on it daily are sometimes unaware of what's going on. It's just, there are a lot of moving pieces. We do try and keep up with it as best we can. On the 18th, the public hearing was on an act concerning inclusion in certain communities, and what that is the housing authorities in any given town would have the ability to work in a 15-mile radius of their current housing authority. So that would go outside most town borders. So Darien would have 15 miles into another town. Norwalk would have 15 miles into all the towns surrounding them. And all of these, you can check the CGA website, the Connecticut General Assembly website, all of these, and you look up the bill number, and I'm happy to do this if you want to do a separate session on how to navigate the CGA website, because it's full of information and all the public testimony gets logged in, and all you have to do is when you go to the CGA website, is go to the bottom and put in the bill number, and it pulls up the bill, and you can click on the tab that says public testimony on any given bill. So you can read the public testimony, and I think on 804 there were probably about 100 or more public testimonies. Another proposal that was heard that day was an act concerning, 804 was inclusion in certain communities. So there were a number of provisions in that bill, and I know Jeremy's going to go through that. 6430 is an act concerning housing authority jurisdiction, and that's the one that would allow a housing authority to be able to build or do a project in another town within 15 miles of a radius. 6521 is an act concerning changes to zoning and affordable housing requirements, and this deals with accessory dwelling units, and it also prohibits list back agreements. This, I believe, Jeremy, is, and I'm not on either of these two committees. I have 3 other committees, so you have to focus in depth on the committees you're on, but certainly I'm following this as much as I can. This one is, totally lost my train of thought.
6521.
Anyway.
You were talking about.
Right. And the accessory dwelling units, I know that's been bounced around for a while, that idea. And I think that's, it really is, you are the PZNH committee, and these are the ideas that you need to build on and have conversations about. And on the back of this, I thought this letter was very, very good, and it really outlined very clearly and simply what the issues are, because when you start reading the legislation, I will also send the bills in their entirety in links to Amy, and she can send them to you, because a couple of them are 29 pages. It's a lot of legal language, but you drill down, and it's the substance of what may become law. The reduction in parking requirements, that's where I was going. 6521 has the reduction in parking requirements for creating more density in towns. It also has the provision that would allow development of multifamily units anywhere within a half mile of a transit station, a quarter mile of a commercial corridor. So anything a half mile, when you take a radius in for the Darien train station, for example, it would be a half mile radius around that train station. That has an impact on a significant number of neighborhoods in Darien. So it's something that our community needs to understand, the impact of this and what it means. capping, there are a couple other technical things that Jeremy can go into, the capping of the peer review fees. Traffic and sewer standards would be changed to allow for an upgrading for more capacity. So if you're going to build on right now, if it's a zone for a quarter acre, single family home on a quarter acre, and they're able to build 4 units on there, obviously we have to upgrade the sewer system and the infrastructure to accommodate that. So there's provisions for that.
And are those provisions based on given that burden put on the town or the developer? As it's written now?
As it's written, my understanding is the town, but this is where in the legislative process, this is where your voices make a difference. Is 4 or 5 of these bills have had public hearings. There are a few more that will be coming out of planning and development in the next couple of weeks. When we hear a bill in a public hearing, we have the original bill language, and we often amend it, and it's called substitute language, to either modify in any direction the language depending on the public input. And then it gets sent to the House or Senate floor for a vote. Sometimes it doesn't get voted out of committee, most often it does. So that's the process, and the public hearings will end for these committees by the end of March. And then the financial committees end up finishing their work middle of April. So the next 3 weeks are really critical to understand the details of this and what your thoughts are, developing ideas around this, and whether or not you want to give public testimony, and certainly educating everyone who lives in town within a half-mile radius what this impact might be.
As a process question,
Yes.
public hearings are happening now. Then they change the substitute language into
Well, they may not. I mean, yeah,
could.
sometimes they do, sometimes they don't.
They could.
Right.
Yes.
They could. But the substitute language might be just might be just changing 1 or 2 words. Or it could be striking an entire paragraph. It runs the gamut.
Could it be changing the thread of the intention of the bill? And then it gets in front of the floor without actually public hearing on a major change?
Good question. The major change presumably was made given the amount and intent of the response in the public hearing.
Okay.
So that's a very good question.
So now, I mean, you're saying from at the end of March, our ability as a body public to give input, that window is going to close within 3 weeks.
Yes, but then the next process is when it goes to the House and Senate floor, then we can amend further, or we can vote the bill. If there's significant public outcry or support one way or the other, if there's significant outcry against a proposal, even though it's passed out of committee, it may not be called for a vote on the floor of the House or the floor of the Senate.
Okay.
And we're in session till the first week in June. So once these bills get voted out of committee, we have another 8 weeks before the end of session.
Okay.
So it is very important to let all, and there are 4 legislators that represent Darien in Hartford, 2 state senators and a newly elected state senator as of Tuesday, Billy Miller, is representing the southern half of Darien.
Jeremy, can you weigh in on, I know there's a couple of ideas that are crossing different proposed legislation. Can you give some guidance on what this would mean for your department, potentially residents of Darien, and what you can no longer weigh in on as a planning and zoning?
Well, certainly, I think as part of this process, I've learned a lot about, I don't know if the correct term, Terry, is skeleton bill or concept bill, where concept will be put forward by a legislator. Wouldn't it be great if this, or to allow gambling, or whatever the high concept is? And at that point, it's very tough to get a feel for what that means. And I think that's some of the issues we've been working on for a few months. Terry, I think some of those concepts and skeleton bills came out October, November even, correct?
Some of them actually came out end of June last year.
Yeah, so we've been kind of working with and going to meetings, sessions, and calls like this to better understand the proposals and issues being put forth. Some of the issues have, I think, gotten a little more momentum than others. So, for example, the accessory dwelling units seems to be one that seems to be picking up steam. One of the issues that Terry mentioned earlier, which is relative to peer review fees that developers pay, which was maximizing how much a town could charge a developer. That seems to have lost momentum. I have not seen or heard a proposal on that issue, but I did hear the concept presented. So again, that's what we're trying to understand. I know Jamie Stevenson, myself, Terry have all been on calls to give input and feedback over the past couple months on many of the issues we'll talk about tonight in terms of explaining from people who are on the ground reviewing applications, who work with planning and zoning commissions, who've seen kind of what works in various communities. I know I've had numerous discussions with many of my compadres, planning and zoning directors in other towns, New Canaan, Fairfield, Wilton, Norwalk, Stamford, Greenwich, and understanding, again, right now the state statutes allow planning and zoning commissions to use different tools, different laws, different ways to zone, different provisions, and some towns have different emphasis. So for example, let's talk a little bit about accessory dwelling units. There are many communities that currently allow them, and they've seen different results. Fairfield, I think, just passed something a few weeks ago, and Darien is probably going to start looking at that closer. But again, the devil's in the details in terms of how you allow them, how big, how small, on which lots. Do you allow them as of right, or do you have some kind of permitting process? And you've all, in your role as being on the RTM, have either heard about or attended planning and zoning commission meetings to see firsthand the public hearing process, where you have elected officials, the planning and zoning commission, who are residents of the community, who are hearing an application about something that requires an approval from their group. And they're taking input and feedback from people like yourselves about, hey, you might not live in this neighborhood, but I'm here to tell you about what's going on in this neighborhood that could affect your understanding of the proposal before you, whether that's traffic or parking or noise or whatever it might be, that people like yourselves can give input and feedback that helps everyone understand. Well, many of the commission members lived in town many years. They're not specific to any one neighborhood. So you all come from different parts of the area.
I think it's important to highlight to everybody when these proposals are recommending changes as of right, that means they are effectively eliminating that public hearing input from Darien residents, what's happening in their town. So I think that's an important connecting the dots.
Right.
That's the key. That's the key point. And it's very similar to regionalizing education. You're losing that ability for local oversight, local accountability, and local transparency. And the further government gets away from the people. Well, I've just seen it with the human services. I'm on human services committee, and human services in 1991 was still delivered in all 169 towns very effectively, very efficiently. The human service directors knew everybody. They knew the people who needed help. They protected the safety net. They were able to be responsive and nimble to the needs of the people. Then gradually, I think 1995, 1992 or 93, they moved it to Stamford, and now it's done at the state level. And it's just much more difficult. It's much more bureaucratic. It's not as responsive to the people. Although our human services is tremendous. I work with them on a great deal of issues, and a lot of them is because of the bureaucracy that's built between the people and the delivery of services. And I think people do need to understand that there is a great deal of enthusiasm with a lot of legislators in Hartford to support these ideas. And we need to I want to help you all understand it so that you're well informed and can talk to your constituents about this, the importance of understanding the impact of this, because it does mean if we lose that local control and they allow everyone within a half mile of a train station to build up to 4 units, that significantly changes a community and changes people's investment in their homes.
I can tell you, I had my first buyer asked me this question about whether a house I was showing was within a half a mile radius of the Darien train station, because she wanted to know, because she read the New York Times article about this, and she wanted to know. Yeah.
Right.
And Terry,
Yes, sir.
isn't it also a quarter mile of a commercial district in addition?
Yes.
So
Yes,
wouldn't that
it
be
is.
a quarter mile each side of the post road from one end of town to the other?
Well, that's one question we had, Mike. That's a good question.
Yeah, good
We've
question.
seen different iterations of this bill. The first iteration we saw, again, this is 6 to 8 months ago, was quarter mile within every train station. So I brought that to the attention of the person whose idea it was. I said, Darien, when you write a bill, and Terry can attest to this, you have to write it for the entire state. I said, Darien's different. Darien would be affected by 6 train stations. And she kind of looked at me like that, like, what do you mean 6? I said, well, if you take the quarter mile radius, there would be Talmadge Hill, Rowayton, there'd be 2 in Stamford, and then Darien and Norton Heights. And there would be no community in the state of Connecticut that would have had more impact from train stations. And I said, with all due respect, I understand the concept, but when you practically look at it, those train stations in Stamford are accessible if you can swim the Noroton River. And I said, that's not really a quarter mile when you say you have to walk around. So eventually the bill has changed some of the wording, and now I think the last proposal I saw was 1 train station and a commercial corridor to be determined by the town, or some language like that. So we have tried looking at different trying to, again, figure out how it could affect Darien, whether we meet the criteria, whether we would have to do some rezoning, whether a lot of the rezoning we've done in recent years in Noroton Heights for Avalon, for the Federal Realty Project, for the Palmer development, whether that gets us to the standard they've arbitrarily set, whether some of the rezoning we've done near Darien downtown would be sufficient. I don't know, because the wording in the bill is not clear yet. And so it's difficult for us to give concise, concrete answers at this point, but we are looking at possible effects, areas that we might have to rezone, districts that we might have to change. But again, we are closer than many communities in terms of over the past 20 years, and that's what we wrote about in the letter that was sent up to Hartford. Darien has made tremendous progress compared to many communities, and that's witnessed by our 2 affordable housing moratoriums. We've had that much multifamily housing constructed, hundreds and hundreds of units, and as you all know, we have basically 300 more units already in the pipeline, ready to be built. Some are underway. So we're proud of our track record, and we're going to continue to build on that.
The other, I think Jeremy touched on it too, is the lack of, Darien is one of the most, if not the most densely developed city in the state of Connecticut. And this one size fits all wouldn't take that into account. So there are challenges with this legislation that, again, we all need to understand the details.
Right. When you look at
Darien has done a very good job with developing affordable housing.
Right. If you look at what we talked about a little bit for those, when we talk to others, we say, look, if you're, we might not all in this audience be familiar with other communities throughout the state. Our knowledge may vary. And what I explain to people is Darien, your perception of Darien might not be what's actually going on in Darien. Come on down, take a look, go see what the work that we've already done. We did the Heights at Darien. We just finished the Royal a couple months ago. David Genovese is working on projects. We have a lot going on in terms of apartment buildings. You saw the movie theaters being renovated with apartments above. So there's a lot of things, big projects, small projects, and the fact that we're nestled between Stamford and Norwalk, two of the biggest cities in the state of Connecticut, is a factor. But Darien is much denser than most people perceive.
Right.
So that's kind of a surprise when you look at the numbers. We have a lot more high density zones than most suburban communities.
Questions from the commission? I'm sorry, from the committee for Terry or Jeremy.
You mentioned Fairfield. Are a number of towns looking at their zoning while this is going on?
Exactly, Mike. I think that's a very good point. I want to say all the lower Fairfield County communities that I've spoken to, New Canaan, Westport, Fairfield, Greenwich, ourselves, are all using this as an opportunity to kind of take a step back and say, okay, what can we do to make some changes? And I know our Planning and Zoning Commission has tried to get something to a public hearing, maybe as soon as late April, maybe early May, in terms of pursuing some of these issues, saying, you know what, these aren't bad ideas. Some of the ideas make sense, maybe not to the extent they're putting it forth in the bill, but there's steps that Darien could take that the Planning and Zoning Commission in Darien is comfortable with. And so you will start seeing proposals over the next month or two trying to make further progress, if you will. So for example, one of those would be Darien is one of the few communities in the state of Connecticut that has what's called inclusionary zoning. And what that is for certain size development projects, the developer must include an affordable unit or units, depending on the size of their development, or pay a fee in lieu. So that's been a successful program in Darien. Again, it depends on the circumstances. It won't work everywhere. Certainly Darien's economy and demand is strong enough that inclusionary zoning has worked. And so we've had a number of projects that have created inclusionary units, which are deed restricted affordable units constructed as part of a market rate development. We've also had a fee in lieu paid for a project, which allowed us to contribute money towards the construction of the Royal at Darien, which was 55 apartments at the corner of Academy Street and Boston Post Road. So we've seen success with that program in Darien. That type of program has worked well in Stamford. I think New Canaan has taken a different tack than inclusionary zoning. What New Canaan has is a fee attached to permits. So when people pull a permit, New Canaan assesses an extra fee, and that fee goes in a special fund that New Canaan uses to fund affordable housing in New Canaan. Again, that's also been successful in New Canaan, but that's a different tool that they've used. So again, what we're seeing, different communities trying to address different ways of doing things. So you're right, one of the things, Fairfield just adopted accessory dwelling units. That was adopted, I want to say, the last week in February in Fairfield. We're going to certainly take a look at what they did. I'll talk to the planner there, kind of understand the ramifications. What are they trying to achieve? Are they trying to create deed restricted affordable units? Or are they just trying to create what the statute talks about is middle housing, which might not be deed restricted, I don't want to say super cheap, but a limit on the income of the person that can live there, or is there no income? What's the maximum size they would allow, for example? So there are different parameters that, depending on the parameters, you might get different results. So I want to understand what Fairfield's done, what they hope to achieve. Our planning and zoning is looking at putting a proposal forth on that, possibly as soon as this summer. And again, what zoning districts would allow that? I think we have to think that out a little bit, and the possible impacts on what do you do for a property that might be served by septic system or well? How do you then allow accessory dwelling units? What provisions need to be made there? So there's a lot of things that work together, provisions that work together. So we've had a lot of success as well in Darien with rezoning properties. So that has been a very productive way for us to create more units as well. So we've had different tools that we've used. Again, we've had a lot of success over the past few years with housing authority projects, with private developers building projects. We have a lot of what I'll call transit-oriented projects that have already been approved, 2 in Norotan Heights, 1 in downtown, which are all near walkable to train stations. Again, we did that. We didn't need state legislation to tell us to do that. We said, this makes sense for Darien. Let's change the zoning to allow it. And it resulted in what I think are 3 excellent projects that are really going to do a lot for mixed use development. We're going to get a lot of new commercial tenants. I know Federal Realty, I was speaking to them earlier today. The new Walgreens is going to open next month, believe it or not. And then soon after that, they're going to get other commercial tenants, possibly as soon as later this year. Nothing to announce at this point, but you could see that those apartments will come soon thereafter. Very exciting times, and we're really pleased to see results that we can point to and say, look, we were able to make these work. The planning and zoning is willing to work with builders and developers, and we see that with the large number of projects that have been constructed and appear to be very successful in town.
Okay. So,
Terry, what's the governor said so far?
Good question. I've only seen one statement from him, and I've not had a personal conversation with him about this. I don't believe he's in support of it, so I don't know that he would sign the legislation, but there's a lot that could change. I don't, so I can't speak for him.
I hadn't noticed any. I hadn't noticed any statements. That's why but I might have missed something that he said.
Right. He said something maybe a couple of months
That's
ago that he sorry, that he was not
that was a good
at that point. I'm sorry. Say that. Was that Mike?
No,
No.
don't worry about
No,
it.
no, wasn't
That's
me.
not important.
Oh, okay. So he would have, if this passes, any form of this passes, he would have to sign it. And I don't know that he will or won't.
Thanks.
so a lot is on in flux. A lot is being proposed. The takeaways and summary from what I can gather is, number one, Darien has taken the initiative to make changes on a lot of these fronts at a local level at our discretion. A lot of proposals across multiple bills, and now is the time for us as committee members to follow all of these bouncing balls and try to have our own personal understanding and the way you want to help educate the people in your districts about what is being proposed, what are the potential ramifications, and encourage people to be involved and follow the issues. And after this meeting, Terry, if you could send to me the kind of the insider's guide on this is the website, this is how you would, these are the bills you need to follow, and these are the ways that you can get public testimony that has happened, how you can create a public testimony for yourself or for anybody else in your district that is interested. All of these things I think are, even though there's not a resolution at an RTM full body meeting for us to vote on or to make recommendations on. I do think it's important for each and every one of us to be, number one, aware of the issues, informed, and be able to articulate to anybody in your district that asks you these questions on how they can, again, become informed and follow and involved.
Right, and I would like to add two things. One, Jamie Stevenson and I did a Bring It Home, which is our series of bringing Hartford legislation down to Darien, having people understand it and having dialogue with constituents on these. We did one a week ago that has been recorded. And also, I cannot stress enough how passionate the group of supporters for this legislation is. And they are working very hard to get it passed. So just please be aware of that and don't underestimate that.
Where's that recording available that you can find?
I should know this off the top of my head. Marcy actually produced it. Marcy, are you still on?
Yep, I'm here. I think you can get it on the RTC website
Okay.
or on the
I will
RTC
send that-
Facebook page.
Okay, thank you.
I will, Mike, I will send that, Mike, I will send that to Amy as well, that link to that. Because that had a lot of information. We had Francis Pickering on that call, and Francis Pickering, Jamie is the former chairman of the Western Connecticut Council of Governments, which encompasses 16 towns in the western part of the state. Francis Pickering is the executive director and extremely knowledgeable on history and zoning and trends, and he has all the information and is quite good on that. And we had another legislator, Kimberly Fiorello, who represents Greenwich and Stamford. She is on Planning and Development Committee.
I think Terry might have frozen.
So has done a deep dive on these issues. So
okay. Also, if you could just keep as committee members.
I have a slow network connection.
As committee members, if you could just also keep track of your emails, notifications. Jamie's very good about sharing information to us from both sides of the aisle on, Darien Talks Housing and Bring It Home Darien. And I'm always distributing all of those links for all of you guys to get to log in and see all sides of the perspective and all sides of the topic. So if we could all just stay informed, that would be great. Okay. Any other questions for Terry? Okay. Next on our agenda.
Thanks, Terry.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Terry.
Good night. Nice to see you all. Please call with any questions at any point. Thanks.
Thank you. Jeremy,
Thanks, Terry.
a quick update, non-update on the budget. There's not many changes for our committee to follow, but if you can give us the highlights, that'd be great.
Sure. I think I sent it off to you, Amy. In terms of basically, there's no change in the budget. The commission's going to be over the next year, obviously very busy responding to legislation. And even if none of the legislation passes, they're still going to put forth concepts and ideas that will pursue some of these issues. The other thing they have to work on, a few years ago, there was a law passed that modified statute 8-30J, which requires communities to develop affordable housing plans by July of 2022. And back in 2017, when it passed, they gave communities 5 years. And we're like, okay, we'll get to it. We're busy. We'll do something. And, it's creeping up pretty close. So obviously, we were pretty much ready to embark on it. Then this whole issue came forward on the housing and zoning changes. But I believe that we're going to get started with that affordable housing plan in order to have it completed within about a year from now.
Okay.
So that's certainly one thing that you're going to see on our plates. But basically, the budget has no changes. We're currently still working like you. COVID procedures, which means online meetings. We see that for the foreseeable future, at least a few more months. One of the reasons is it allows a lot of people to get online very quickly, and you don't have to worry about getting a big enough room to accommodate everyone. So
Yep.
what we'd also find is it's much more convenient. There are technical glitches, but overall, the commission's fairly happy with that. So there's really, I think if you look at the line items in the budget, I don't think any of them are changing. We do have a very surprising first quarter this year, January to March. The number of zoning and building permits is up. We cannot approve them fast enough. Lots and lots and lots and lots of requests for pools and hot tubs. Probably in the January to March quarter, we'll probably act upon a year's worth of them. And I've spoken to many pool contractors who say, if you want to swim this year, it's too late. You will not be swimming till next year. They are already overbooked. They have more customers than they can deal with. And the permits for pools are crazy, crazy, crazy. Obviously, additions, alterations, new houses, new commercial development, obviously, that's where the bulk of our work is. Federal Realty, you see what's going on in Norton Heights. David Genovese is just about to get underway. And of course, Oxford School is going to be a multiple year project that we're out there inspecting and reviewing. So that is also multiple years. So certainly, I thought during COVID things would die down. It's gone just the opposite. It's gotten even busier. People like yourselves who are all home right now are saying, boy, I could really use extra room. You know, it changed the whole commuting dynamic. So people who commute into the city might not anymore. So we're seeing a lot more work on permits. I assume that's only going to help the grand list, but it is a surprising result of COVID is the planning world has changed. Amy, you just mentioned, you know, buyers are asking different questions than ever in terms of what they're looking for, how they're looking for it. So certainly next year, it starts in just a few months, next fiscal year, we expect that to continue. It is just crazy busy. And I think what you'll see is once David Genovese starts the demolition downtown, which will be over the next few months, and if all goes well, the Palmers start over the summer as well, that will really bring it towards everyone like, wow, there is a lot going on in this community. So we expect a very busy year, which has started January, and we see that just continuing. Because normally, January, February, March are not our busy season. April, May, June is, and it's already, and you'll see in my quarterly report, which comes out in April, the numbers are way up.
Have your required newspaper notices cost stabilized?
Yeah,
Couple
that's
years
always
ago,
the
you said
issue,
that
Mike.
was a big wild card
You know,
in your budget.
One of the bills that Terry and I did not talk about is almost every year there's a bill that ends up in the legislature allowing communities to advertise on the internet rather than in newspapers. And of course, you're all aware of the status of the newspaper industry has really changed. And that bill, I've seen that bill every year or two for the past 20 years. The rumor is this year it's getting a lot of momentum because more and more people are using the internet as a resource. So for example, one of the governor's orders allowed communities to post application materials of pending applications on the town website with the understanding that they might not want to come to town hall during a pandemic. So we started doing that. We set up 4 different websites, one for each of the land use boards. So it's PZC pending applications, ZBA pending applications, ARB pending applications, EPC pending applications, where you can go and see basically what's in our application files for each application. And you just go in, whatever application you're interested in, you click, and you see everything in the file. The application, the legal notice, all the comments from the public. It's really changed the way our office operates. It really allows you at home to not even need to come into the office. It's much better for the public, and it's much more transparent. You can't hide anything in a file or anything. It's all open. It's all on the internet. And that, to me, has been a big plus. I would have never thought that that would be something that we would, within the past year, we had never thought to do it before. And now it's just become part of our daily routine to take every email that someone sends, or letter, or document, or report, whatever it is, or some of the PowerPoints that get presented at meetings. So it really is a technological change. Now, when people bring in their applications, they bring in a little thumb drive with all their traffic reports, site plans, whatever it is, it's all there. We upload it to the town webpage and it's done. It is really one of the benefits I've seen. And for us, it allows us to do work easier remotely, of course. I could access anything right now. I wouldn't need the file in front of me. And it really is, again, it's all about the public and giving them the opportunity to see what's going on. And that's worked out great. So it's a long answer to your question, Mike. I don't know if that bill is going to pass. We still do advertise in the newspaper. The Darien Times rate, while it's not as low as it used to be, is not as outrageous as what I've heard in other parts of the state. Other communities struggle with the fact that there really is no local newspaper. So and that's not really the best way to get the word out to people. So that is, whether that will affect our budget going forward, I don't know. Too early to tell.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions for Jeremy before we move on to an update on the Blight Commission activities? Okay. All right.
Thanks, Jeremy.
Thank you.
Thank
so
you.
much.
Have a great evening.
Thank you for taking the time. We really, really appreciate your insider's insight. Thank you. Okay. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Michael, who is on the Blight Commission, to give us an update and maybe just set the stage for some of our new members. He's taken the time to put together a presentation. Over to you, Mike.
Yep, just pulling it up now. Bear with me. Let me know if you guys can see it.
Yes.
Great. And I will, I just put a couple slides together to chat tonight at Amy's request. And I will send this as a PDF to everybody afterward, but just thought I would click through it tonight. So Amy and I chatted, and she felt that given the number of new members, there wasn't probably a clarity on what the Blight Review Board was. So I thought I would start with some history. Let me click through. First is the mission of the Blight Review Board is to define, regulate, prohibit, and abate housing blight in order to protect, preserve, and promote
Michael, on my
public health.
screen, is there a slide for that? It didn't switch on mine. I just still see Blight update. Is there a slide that you're reading from?
It is. Does anyone else see it?
I just see the first one.
It didn't advance on mine.
I'm not sure what to do because it's advanced on my screen.
Let me.
You
want me to try to do? You want to do the PDF? And I'll
sure.
share my screen to do the PDF.
Sure. There you go.
There you go.
Wait, were you able to see that?
Yeah.
I could see mission.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I'll go. I guess it's when I'm in slide view that it wasn't working. So let me just work from this then, if you can see it. So
there you go. Can you see it now?
Can everyone see the mission slide now?
Yes.
Yes.
Are we sharing mine or are we sharing yours?
We're sharing mine still.
right now. Okay, hold on.
I think we're still sharing mine, but tell me if we're not. I'm going to go back to the first slide. Can you see the first slide, or are you looking at Mike's? I'm sorry. Can you guys see?
I can't see anything now.
Yeah, right.
Okay, let me try this again. So
You're
Mike,
back now
you've
as the
taken
presenter.
screen share.
Yeah, you're back. You're back as the presenter now.
Okay, I'm opening it up. And can
There you
everyone
go.
see the
Now it's changed.
opening slide still?
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah, it's changed now to mission.
But it will not let me advance. Oh yeah, there we go. So can
There we
you
go.
now?
Yep.
Yes.
All good.
Okay, I'm sorry, guys. We tried this before and it worked, and now it's not working. So I'm sorry. So yeah, let's go back to the Blight Review Board's mission. I won't read it word for word. You guys can look at it, but basically, some of the misconceptions is it is purely about residential. It's about housing. It's not about our commercial districts. And I've got a link to what the ordinance is and what some of the FAQs are. So when you get this, hopefully you'll be able to access the links. Those were obviously documents that were too difficult to put into slides. The history was the Blight Review Ordinance was adopted in early 2017, and then the review board was established at that point as well. So the review board is only 4 years old. The membership of the committee or the board is the paid Blight Review officer that works for the town, a member of the Board of Selectmen, PZ&H, actually RTM. It's not specifically PZ&H. That's an error on my part. I am the RTM representative, and I happen to be on PZ&H. Commission on Aging, Human Services, and one of the members of P&Z, and this year that individual is the chair. Ex officio would be Jamie, Jeremy, and Allie, the director of Human Services. And again, when I came into PZ&H a year and a half ago, I wasn't aware of what the Blight Review Board was, and really didn't understand it to be as much of a big piece of it is the human services aspect of this, as opposed to a zoning enforcement type of, reason for being. I think that's an important differentiator. Let me go to just give a picture of what we've been doing in the last year or so. From the beginning of the commission, or the board, there have been about 67 cases that have come before the board. Most of them were deemed to not meet the standard of blight per the ordinance. But currently there are about 11 cases that we're watching. One case that is actively being and positively being resolved, and 7 that we really view as active blight issues. As of 2020, we've started to assess fines for non-compliance. Unpaid fines accrue as a lien against the property. We have not taken any legal action to collect those fines as yet. All formal legal actions that are ultimately taken, are reviewed by legal counsel on behalf of the town before we act. And do I have anything else? Just kind of how do we work? The board approaches each case, and this kind of goes back to the human service aspect that I mentioned earlier. The board approaches each case with how can we help the owner remedy the blight, as opposed to, what is the penalty here for having a blighted property? So the goal is ultimately to improve the properties, not for the board to be, punitive. We issue multiple warnings, quite a few, many more probably than people might think we would. And the blight officer documents all of this, photographs, both before any mitigation that's proposed or undertaken, and then during mitigation. And when there is this is an important piece, I think, when there's a bona fide need, Human Services provides assistance. A structured assistance that we offer to a homeowner who can't physically or financially remedy the situation themselves. That could be in the form of providing labor, volunteer labor, could be in the form of providing dumpsters or any other materials needed to clear something out. Or it could even be providing town resources to clear an area or cut a tree limb or something of that nature to assist. That's kind of a quick overview. I figured I'd just give that highlight and then take any questions anyone has.
Didn't you have some group that's come forward to, as an organized process to help human service cases to help them with their property?
Yeah, there are a few different ones that have come forward. I don't remember all of them who they were. You know, Allie kind of takes care of that and then brings to us and says, yes, I've got such and such that will come and work on such and such property, etc. We've never had to turn anyone away from needing we've been able to fill every need that's existed or for someone needing help to get something remedied. Some won't accept it. Some will say they will take it, and then the help arrives and they don't respond. It's a really interesting dynamic to be on the Blight Committee. I will say that.
Well, thank you.
I think it's been one of the best things about uncovering cases that Allie didn't know about 3 years ago, that they just weren't aware. Well, they just weren't aware of some of the cases that the Blight this uncovered.
Yeah, and I would say of the 11 that we've got active right now, a couple of them are fairly aggressively in violation and are challenging cases that we're working through. A few of them are, I would say at least half of them are people with legitimate human service needs that we need to work with them to power through. And then a couple of them have been challenging with absentee owners that, in fact, in one of the properties, it's taken a year to find out who the actual owner is and how to contact that individual. I mean, we've done investigation, but having to research things with mortgage department, of banks to find out ownership, because the town, land records don't necessarily provide everything that's needed if someone is moved or it's held in a name of a corporation or something else. There's a lot of investigation on a small handful of the cases, but the vast majority are, I'll generalize, but elderly, and, fixed/lower income. Some of them may have some, mental health issues, and those are obstacles to help them get through and figure out how to help them with their properties. And we progress. The fines are really levied when there is a blatant disregard for the need to remedy the blight.
Michael, this is Liz Bacon talking. Question for you, and thanks for serving. I was on the Blight Committee the first couple of years, and it was a revelation to see how it operated, and agree that the human services component is so important. I'm wondering how those cases are coming to your attention. How are they being reported, and who's reporting them?
They're generally reported through just residents issuing a complaint to the town, and it gets to Bob, who is the blight enforcement or the blight officer. And then Bob logs them in. He documents the situation. He'll go out to the site. He'll photograph it. The other thing that's probably worth noting, I didn't put in the slides, but that's worth noting is when we have our meetings, which are obviously public meetings, we don't speak about specific addresses. We have case numbers. And we will publicly address case number 18-12, case number 12 from 2018, and we will address it as such. We have notes, a key to that will tell us what the property is, and we'll have photographs or videos or any other documentation that Bob has pulled together for us. But that's, again, how we protect people's privacy and sensitivities.
So people are logging into the website and submitting a concern that way?
I actually don't know. I mean, that's a great question, Liz. I don't know if it's phone calls, or some of them may be coming to Bob from a zoning officer or someone who notices something out in town. So I think it comes in from a variety of sources. I will ask Bob that, kind of what the breakdown is of where it comes in, and I'll report that back to the committee.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any
My
other
pleasure.
questions for Michael? Okay, well, that's all I had on tonight's agenda, unless there's other business that any of the committee members want to raise or questions?
I wonder if the League of Women Voters, if there's time to be able to put together a housing program with all of our representatives.
What do you mean?
Well, the RTM is non-political, and so, but to have a thing where Matt Blumenthal's invited and Terry's invited, and
Yeah,
that all four are invited, because those are the people that the community is going to have to reach out to on how they want them to vote. And so they ought to be able to come and explain their position to us, and get input from their constituents.
yeah, because right
And
now,
Mike, I think that's a great idea.
yeah,
I think that's a great idea, because I've been sitting here listening to this, and in the reading I was doing before, I kept thinking, how many people in town really understand the potential impact? Regardless of whether you support it or you are against it, that's immaterial for me right now. It's how many people really understand what the impact of the legislation could be, enough to even therefore have an opinion one way or the other. And I would guess it's a pretty small number.
Yeah, and then quite honestly, it's not easy to follow the bouncing ball, I call it, of the path that it takes, and all the iterations of what in its idea form, all the different hurdles and gates it goes through, various inflection points where public can have an influence or not, then what happens after that, and it's not an intuitive or straightforward path that seems to be.
Yeah, I would think that one thing that would be useful in something like that would be for someone who are on the panel, maybe it's the league or whomever themselves that's moderating, but lay out what the potential timeline is. This could happen in March, this could happen in June or July. The governor would then sign, whatever it is, just lay that out so people have really that picture. And then if they want to follow the bouncing ball, at least they know where the ball's going.
Yep. I mean, and that's why I invited Terry today, for all of us to understand that this is something that's not, down the road. This is right here. So we all need to, to be aware, informed, and know how to get involved if you so choose.
Yeah, there are, I don't want to call them battling webinars, but there are webinars that, I don't know how many, I listened to the first half hour of the one of them tonight before our meeting started, and I was busy and I couldn't listen to Terry and Jamie's, but the more informed we can be, the better.
Yeah, I think that's an excellent point. So it would be the League of Women Voters that would be probably the best.
We talked about at the Rules Committee or the RTM about inviting someone at our next meeting, but we don't do political issues. It's a nonpartisan organization. It's a nonpartisan. So how do we? And the League of Women Voters, then, like the thing that Jamie did with Terry and the one tonight, TV 79 can't carry them because they're political. They're sponsored either by different committees. They're not. The League of Women Voters is the only group that can put together that kind of nonpartisan event that we can carry.
So just food for thought, League of Women Voters did have a legislative coffee a couple of days ago, and
I heard it
Matt
was
and
terrific.
Terry. Yeah, did you attend?
I was not able to.
Okay, so Matt and Terry both attended. We did not have an election on the new senator yet, so she was not there, and Bob Duff was not able to make it. But they did touch on it a little bit, and I think if you listen, I think Matt and Terry are very much in agreement on a couple of the issues. So you'll find if I believe the League of Women Voters did post it on their Facebook site.
Okay.
So you can go back and re-listen to that.
Oh, it is. I was told it wasn't taped. because it was a perk of membership of the League of Women Voters.
Okay. I thought they said they were putting it on the Facebook page.
You may
I
be
can
right.
double check.
I might have misunderstood. I'll go look on their Facebook page.
Okay. But Amy, if you want me to reach out, I am on the board of League of Women Voters, and I can reach out to check out and see if they're interested in hosting something that's, you know, super focused on this.
Yeah, that would be great. Yeah, see what they say.
Okay.
Okay. With that, is there anybody that would like to make a motion to adjourn at 8:37?
So
So
moved.
moved.
Mike Wheeler, and who was the second?
I'll second that.
Okay, Liz.
That was Elizabeth.
Thank you.
All in favor? All
All
right.
right.
Aye.
Okay.
Thank you
Thanks,
so much.
Amy.
Hey, everyone.
Thank
Thank
you.
Thanks, Michael, for the presentation.
Thank you, Mike and Mike.